Hi, I'm Fenella Saunders. I'm the editor-in-chief of American Scientist. This is Science by the Slice. This is a monthly talk series we do during the academic year. It is sponsored by the NC Biotech Center, and it is run in collaboration with Science Communicators of North Carolina and the RTP chapter of Sigma Xi. In addition, I should mention that we have another talk next Thursday, February 1st, just to get us back on our schedule. So come back for that one. I promise I'll order different pizza so we don't have the same pizza 2 weeks in a row. So that being said, let's get started with our talk for this week. We have a really great talk from Helen Huang and Aaron Fleming. So we got two speakers today on neural control of robotic prosthetic limbs. Dr. Huang is the Jackson Family Distinguished Professor in the Joint Department of Biomedical Engineering at North Carolina State University and the UNC, Director of the Closed Loop Engineering for Advanced Rehabilitation, or CLEAR Core. She is also co-director of the Rehabilitation Engineering Research Center. Dr. Aaron Fleming earned his BS in Mechanical Engineering at NC State and his PhD from the Joint Department of Biomedical Engineering at NC State and UNC. He was the NIH Ruth Kirstein Pre-Doctoral Individual National Research Service Award winner, and he's currently a postdoc fellow at Duke and co-founded startup companies Open Gate Prosthetics and Avex Motion based in RTP. So do you want to start? Thank you.
Great, thank you for the introduction, and then thank you for inviting me to give a talk here. So very excited to be here. I will start with just a little bit of introduction about where we come from. So we are in the Joint Department of Biomedical Engineering at NC State Centennial Campus and also UNC Chapel Hill. Well, you know, talking about NC State, UNC, usually the impression, I'm sure you understand this is basically a rivalry in the field. But what odd that we have a joint department. We are two universities joined together. Truly joined together has a program that is joined both at the graduate level and undergraduate level. So the student who go through our program essentially got a diploma with both university attached. This is one of the picture you can see on the side is you know, the student graduation. They can choose the color of their graduation gowns color. So the other one that I was a director for is called Closed Loop Engineering for Advanced Rehabilitation. So this is basically leveraged from our joint department, and I had a faculty from a College of Engineering at NC State and also UNC School of Medicine. These include a group of faculty who are interested in investigating research related to rehabilitation medicine, rehabilitation engineering, biomechanics, and also clinical translation of the technology. So if you're interested, I encourage you to view our website, see what we do. So back to the lab. So I lead a lab called the Neuromuscular Rehabilitation Engineering Lab. So this is the lab located at the NC State Centennial Campus. So our research trying to address a question, how we can merge the human biological system with external wearable intelligent robots together with the goal to enhance the mobility or improve quality of life for individual has physical disabilities. So as you can see, we work on a lot of robots attached to the human, including robotic prosthetics and also exoskeleton. And then the question that we are addressing are quite different from people only study robots or only study human. We are trying to say how these two agents, right? One is biology, one is intelligent machine, how they can merge together and function together, essentially to augment the human's physical capability. So sample of research that we are doing is, I'm just listing a couple of projects that we are working on. We work on the neural control of robotic prosthetic limb, including upper limb, and then we're going to talk about lower limb.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm able to see your notes on the Zoom. Are you in presentation mode correctly? Because I'm seeing like your slide notes, like your upcoming slides.
Oh, so should I But
It looks right on that screen, but when I'm looking at it on the Zoom, it shows me all your.
oh, really?
Is there a different mode you can put it in that's gonna?
So if I swap,
Does it say use slideshow? Is there a way to do that?
Can I first stop sharing?
I don't know if you need to stop sharing first, actually.
If I swap the display, then that one will be shifted. I think I'm sharing, this is this.
I mean, I can still see it, it's just smaller, so that.
Right. You know how to do it? You want?
You think
the spot?
Okay.
Or,
I'm sure they can see it.
Yeah.
It's gonna mess up. the.
right, this would change. This is wrong.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one or the other. So yeah, it's either here or there. So go ahead and swap it back. It's fine.
In the presentation, you could share your screen, that might fix it.
Yeah, hold on. Right, okay, another challenge.
Sorry about that.
Okay,
Just go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, well, let me stop, and then, the sharing, and let me reset this. Back. Sharing, sorry about that, maybe I can share just the directly, whole screen. This one. Yes. Pause.
I'm not seeing anything on the Zoom now.
It's a pause. Let's see. Shift.
Just a desktop.
Yeah, it's a desktop. Desktop 2. Yeah, that's the one. Will this work now?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, sorry about the technical difficulty. Okay, well, where I am. So my lab's a project, yes. So I work on a neural control of did I use the?
No, go ahead.
Good. Yep. And then I work on neural control of a limb, so that's the first one. And then the second one is I also work on a lot of intelligent based control of this intelligent device with the goal to, again, coordinate with the human and give appropriate assistance for each individual. Of course, the work that we do really need us to understand the fundamental science behind how human and the robot really interact with each other. And also these two intelligent, also they are smart, they actually adapt. So how they co-adapt. So we carry out a lot of research related to this topic to understanding what's going on. Then we can have an innovation, ideas of how we can improve the robots to improve the physical, augment the physical capability for individual device. Okay, so in this talk, we mainly gonna focus on this neural control of lower limb robotic prostheses. So starting with the societal need, this is the population with a limb loss. This population continue grows. So there is just at least a couple of statistics. There are more than 1 million annual limb amputation globally. And the majority of the limb amputation is actually happening in the lower limb. And then, this population grows continual growth in the United States as the population ages and also the incident for this vascular disease continue to grow. And also many of these patients who lost a limb after have a limb loss, they really depend on this some sort of assistive device to restore the basic activity of their living. So for amputee, for example, prosthetics is definitely something that they would like to have for restore their walking, balance. So if you have been into the clinic in an amputee clinic, so you will realize actually majority of the prosthetic leg, the technology is actually, has been developed for many, many years. It's still a passive device. So passive means they won't move by themselves. They can't generate active movement. So nothing could drive it to move. So for person wear this device in order to walk with it, they have to use their residual limb to power this device. Okay. So in the past about 15 years, the research field started, of course, this is also boosted by the technology, maturation of the technology in the many field. So these robotic powered prostheses became available. So I'm listing a couple of, the prototype, which you see a different university was developed. And also there's a commercial device. One is called a Power Knee, with sell by Ulcer. And also there's Biome, with now it's called Empower, so by Autobot. So these are commercially already available. They're, patients, if they're eligible and then they want to purchase, these are available. So I want to show you the difference between, the powered device versus a passive. So because again, the power device has active motor inside, so it will generate power. I'm first showing just walking on the stairs with a passive device, because the device cannot move, right? So the person could only drag the leg, doing one step at a time. So that's how the individual has a limb loss would negotiate the stair if wear the passive device. But with a power device, it is intelligent. It will generate a power, so allow the person to negotiate the stairs in a more natural way. So this is a step over step approach. So you can understand that, what's the difference between these two. I'm going to show you one slide that's very technical, but bear with me. This is basically, I'm telling you how these current robotic prosthesis is controlled. So this controller is basically autonomous. How is it controlled? So first, human already studied the human locomotion, movement, walking. So this biomechanically is well studied. And then usually the person would define the gait cycle, right? So from the heel contact to another heel contact as a cycle, because it's cyclic. And then define each gait phase among this whole cycle. Every phase, for example, in this case, it's driving the knee joint, how the knee should move, right? During even the gait phase, how this knee is supposed to move. This is actually pre-programmed because we know this. So this is exactly what this program is doing, is they recognize what is the gait phase. Is the heel on the ground or of the toe already off? By knowing this gait phase, then they will describe what this knee is supposed to do. So it's a pre-programmed based upon a well-studied biomechanics of human locomotion. And then with the goal is that they would generate a kind of a normative gait pattern to support the person to walk. So I use these as like a gait cycle, they define different phase. So for walking, level ground walking, then they can generate one. So what if the person is a stair, negotiated with a stair, then you have to pre-program again. But again, this locomotion we also studied, so you can continue expanding this kind of a machine based upon how many locomotion tasks that you wanted to allow this device to support the person to perform. Okay, so what's the limitation is for individual loss of limb, their daily life of course involve a lot of locomotion on a very clean, environments like, standard level ground or stair ascent. But they also have many activities. These activities is harder to pre-program. So example will be playing tennis, right? So we just don't know what's the next. It's very challenging for this intelligent autonomous control could address. So therefore, if the person is performing the task is not in this pre-programmed situation, then the device won't be able to support. Like they can support a basic balance, but they won't be able to move as as for this task. So therefore, I just mentioned the limitation of the current prosthesis control based on the autonomy only, lack ability to support activity that is less predictable and then harder to predefine. So therefore, our goal, remember I mentioned my initially we want to say the goal is to allow the human and the device merge together, function together, and has this versatility. So here, our definition means the prosthesis that can adapt to many different activity, actually probably all of the daily activity to support the individual to perform a daily task. So how can we achieve that? This is a bigger question. So I'm going to shift this to Aaron to talk about his research to address this problem through neural control.
All right. Quickly want to say thank you, Helen, for letting me talk about this and getting to share about some of the research we've been working on for the past 3-4 years, specifically with neural control. So when we talk about neural control, what does that mean? When you want to take a movement, there's a electrical signal that's initiated at the motor cortex, goes down to your muscle, that causes your muscle to contract, and that causes tension at the joint. You have some motion, some angle, some velocity. What you can do is at the muscle level, you can place a sensor over top of it on the skin, and you can start to collect some of this electrical activity that happens at the muscle. So this is very simply what surface electromyography is. And you can use this in different ways, but in a very simple way, you can take the magnitude of the signal to have some representation of how much you're flexing. So if you flex the muscle more, you get more signal. And why is this important? Well, for individuals who have amputation, in their limb, they still have these muscles. Even though these muscles don't have function, they can still flex them. So for someone with the amputation, they can imagine their phantom limb, imagine pointing their toes up. The muscles that would have done that still will flex. And then the same with the muscles in the back if they want to point their toe down. There's a lot of function that's lost, a lot of information that's lost naturally because of the amputation surgery. A lot of sensory feedback that we just subconsciously have is gone, but these muscles still can be activated. They could still be potentially used as a window into the intent of what the person wants to do with a prosthetic limb. So we're not the first to use surface electromyography for prostheses. One of the most common approaches so far has been supervisory control. And you'll see this a lot with upper limb prostheses, where you'll take EMG from a lot of different muscles, the surface electromyography, and you'll use AI machine learning to try and pull out features and predict different states. So like Helen mentioned, you'll potentially predict overground walking, predict going upstairs or up a ramp, and you can kind of predefine these states. But this has the same limitation as before, where you have to basically define a ton of different states if you want to cover all of the activities that people are going to do in everyday life. So another option would be direct EMG control, where you're relying more on the person and simply taking this EMG signal, and all we're going to do is just take the envelope. So we're just tracing the magnitude of it. So we're basically saying if the person activates more, the prosthesis is going to do more. So we can feed the signal into a control law to say if someone flexes more, you're going to get more torque out of it, or you might get more stiffness out of it, or other different control parameters. But the mapping is just very, very straightforward. So the difficulty with this is a lot more relying on the person to activate their muscles appropriately to do certain movements. So what does neural control look like in real life? This is just a video of me with some sensors on. On the top right is the actual muscle signal. You can see when I'm doing toes up, there's kind of the bottom signal goes up, and same with toes down. And we use this signal, we take the envelope of it, we filter it in real time, and we send it to the prosthesis. So you can see the artificial muscle flexes doing for taking toes down or doing toes up. So there's just a very clear picture into what EMG looks like. But what does this look like for someone with a prosthesis? Well, this is a good friend of ours who we've worked with for a long time, trying on prosthesis for the first time. Oh no.
Click.
There we go. And this is just a really fun video we like to share, which is him trying on the prosthesis for the first time. And we love to share the video for obvious reasons. This is a good chance to highlight kind of a facet that's not really shown in publications, where there's kind of an emotional component to using this type of control. We're experiencing the ability to move your ankle, mind you, your prosthetic ankle for the first time, is really an emotional experience for a lot of people. A lot of people say, you know, I felt like I've been able to move my leg for the first time in 10 years and 15 years. We don't really get to share that in publications. It's hard to quantify that. And so I wanted to highlight it here, but moving forward, we're going to talk about stability. We're going to talk about a lot of functional outcomes to try and show you what this control could potentially do. So kind of touching on what Helen already talked about was there's a lot of situations that are difficult for autonomous control. And in this scenario, you have your prosthesis and it knows what the angle might be, maybe knows some force and how much you're weighting it, but it has no idea that a child is running towards you. It has no idea that you want to pick something up off the ground. In the future, you can maybe in some computer vision and start to see what's around you. You can kind of incorporate all these things together, but it'd be very challenging. However, there's a system that already incorporates a lot of information, already makes a decision, and that's the human body. We're very aware of what's around us. We can prepare for certain activities. So when we link this neural control, we can say, okay, let's give the person the active control, let them decide what's going to happen ahead of time. And if they can control the prosthesis well enough, well, maybe we can restore some of these mechanisms that they use to maintain balance. So by mechanisms, I'm going to talk specifically about anticipatory and compensatory posture control. And it's a fancy way of saying you're preparing for something to hit you. So in this scenario, you can imagine someone throwing you a ball. You're not just going to stand there. If it's a heavy ball, you're probably going to move towards it so that when it does hit you or when you catch it, it's not going to push you backward and you have to take a step or you may lose balance. So really anticipatory postural control is just preparing for something to happen, preparing for a disturbance or perturbation. And so this is, again, a mechanism that's would be very hard in an autonomous system to program because, again, it just doesn't know the environment around you and also doesn't know what you intend to do when it hits you. So we wanted to focus on this specific mechanism and say, can we restore this by restoring it with active control? Let's improve balance and function. So that's the hypothesis of the study that we had, we just put out, where we looked at, we asked, does neural control a robotic prosthetic ankle compared to someone's everyday passive device? Does it improve postural stability under these anticipated perturbations? And then second, does it improve normative neuromechanics? So what is the strategy that they're using when controlling the prosthesis and how does that compare to someone who does not have an amputation? So to break that down really quickly, what we're going to look at with the neuromechanics later on is kind of this idea of how the body organizes activation of different muscles. So when you're reaching for something, when you're going to move, you're probably not thinking about activating like specific muscles. Okay, I'm going to activate my biceps and then this. What you're thinking about is kind of a whole body movement. And so the theory is that in the brain, there's kind of an organization of muscles. So instead of one muscle at a time, you're kind of grouping muscles together and you're saying, I'm going to activate this group of muscles to achieve this goal. So this neural muscle module analysis is what we do to see when people use the device, are they coordinating their residual muscle with the rest of their muscles as they like a person without an amputation would. So let's get into it. This is a piece of our study that we don't get to highlight much in the paper, but as a big part of kind of leading up to this study where we went through a whole acclimation and training. So you can imagine someone has a amputation, that there's a lot of information that's lost and maybe there's a lot of time as well. It could be 10, 20, 30 years since they had their amputation. There's a lot of control lost in these muscles. So we built a program where we acclimated people to using the device, did training, and then we evaluated their balance. So I'll go through that a little bit. This is what acclimation looks like. So the activities that we have people doing are not weight bearing. So they're just kind of sitting down, controlling the device. And like in this situation, we have people just trying to mirror what they're doing on either side. So trying to match what their prosthesis is doing. And then we'll move to standing activities where people have like a support. They're not putting their full body weight on the prosthesis and they get more comfortable controlling the prosthesis. So we're trying to slowly acclimate people into controlling the device. Then, so after that, what we'll do is 3-day training. And what we do for training is we have activities that are typical in physical therapy, because we can imagine if this is getting out into the real world one day, it would be great to have this in activities that are already done in physical therapy. And then on top of that, we wanted to focus on activities that really focused on the ankle joint. So if it's something that really requires the prosthetic ankle to be used in order to do this task effectively. So an example of that would be someone trying to pick an object up off the floor. So this is another fun video we like to share. So this training task is just squatting, trying to pick the medicine ball up, trying to use both prosthetic and the intact side equally, and coming back up. And then there's a fun commentary after this.
Oh my gracious, man. The power in this thing is awesome. I'm having to control it, right?
To not throw you back.
Right, and not come up faster than the intact side. I had to control it, literally, to say, okay, that's so much down, that's so much down, and together.
So this is a great example of the type of activities that we do. And people are really pushed or really challenged to use their prosthesis because it's not very obvious if someone is using a passive device. They may like have the device kind of back and they'll move down to pick up an object. They have to do a lot of compensatory activities in order to do something as simple as picking something up off the ground, simply because their prosthetic ankle would not flex with them and they don't have active control over it. And then finally, we're at the evaluation. So we're looking at stability. How does this improve function? People can have a great feeling wearing it, but does it actually help them? So what we did in order to deliver perturbations and really test balance in a consistent way is we built a platform that people would hold onto a handlebar and it would either push them backward or pull them forward. And then there's a light attached to it as well. So they'll be holding onto the handlebar, the light will switch off. And then about 0.5 seconds later, 0.6 seconds later, the perturbation will happen, the weight will drop and it's going to push them backward or pull them forward. So the idea behind this is that there's a heads up. You have about 0.6 seconds to say, okay, I can prepare for the perturbation that's coming. You know what direction it's coming from. So we can start to really tap into, if people have a heads up, they know they can expect what's going on. Are they going to use the prosthesis? Is it going to help their balance? So here's a quick video of what this looks like. On the left, we have someone using their daily device, passive device, and on the right is actually using the neural control. And this is a good like side by side of what this could look like with the perturbation platform. On the left, it's pretty obvious to see, we'll do this in slow-mo, that when the perturbation happens using the passive device, the person has to take a step back. So just a very, very simple way of demonstrating that there's a compensatory action that needs to happen in order to maintain balance. And on the right, it's a little less obvious, but the person is actually flexing their prosthetic ankle on the far side. And the more obvious part of it is they don't have to take a step. So to get into the more nitty gritty of it, on the right, this is like across the participants that we had. So we have 5 people in this study. And we compared them using their passive device to the neural control, this direct EMG control. And we saw that using the direct EMG control, almost all participants just remove the need to take any steps or use any of the guardrails to maintain balance. And on the left side, what we wanted to highlight was the strategy in which they used to do this. So to orient you, this is the passive device, this is the neural control device, and we're looking at the hip angle, the knee angle, and the ankle angle at the time during the perturbation. So that high level stuff, what I want to show you is the ankle angle between the 2 legs. So we're comparing the gray bar to the blue one. We're saying that what we're seeing is that there's kind of this asymmetry. So the intact ankle is moving in one direction and the prosthetic ankle is moving the other. And this is pretty obvious because you can't control passive prosthesis. All you can do is lean on it more and it's going to flex more, but you can control your intact side. And so we see this very marked asymmetry between the 2 ankles, which makes a lot of sense with the passive device. And then also on the knee, on the prosthetic knee, what individuals will do is actually flex the knee on the prosthesis side, but not really flex the knee on the intact side. So again, kind of asymmetry in the strategy for the passive device. And then very clearly with the neural control, we saw like a very big increase in symmetry. So these 2 bars overlapping and saying that the angle of the ankle is the same while they're experiencing this perturbation. And then this asymmetry that was at the knee is largely disappeared. There's still some slight differences, but compared to the passive device, it's very, very different. And then the hip strategy is relatively the same, not much excursion going on. So kind of high level, what we're looking at here is there's this like gross metric of they're taking less steps with this neural control, and also the strategy that they use is more symmetric. They're using the prosthetic limb and the intact limb more similarly. Diving in just a little bit more into kind of some of these other metrics we like to look at. We look at center of mass excursion, so this is that COM, and we also look at center pressure. Center pressure is just the force underneath the foot. And what I wanted to show you guys was with the center of mass excursion, this is an example of an able-bodied person and how they would move their center mass. So the perturbation would happen, and then there's this anticipatory movement of the center mass into it so they don't get pushed backwards. Using the passive device, you have this anticipatory movement of the center mass, but after some time, people can't hold it there or they have to have their center mass kind of further back. And you saw even in the taking of the step, it's pretty obvious they have to take a step backward, and that's where the center mass goes. With a direct EMG control, with a neural control, this is a lot more similar to the able body. They're actually able to hold their center mass a lot more in the same position. So as far as like this stability metric, the center of mass excursion, is a lot more similar. And then really quickly, the center of pressure is really just a window into what the strategy is into controlling balance. And here we see on the able-bodied individuals, there's a lot of symmetry in between the 2 legs. And then with the passive device, there's not symmetry between the 2 legs. And with the neural control, again, this is overlapping and just a huge increase in symmetry. The very last thing I want to highlight is with the center of pressure in the medial lateral direction. This is like side to side center of pressure. So what this means is how much a person is shifting from one side to the other. So with able-bodied individuals, there's a slight side preference to one side, but when someone uses their passive device, there's a heavy shift of the center of pressure towards the intact side. So this tells us that they're relying on their intact side. They're not relying on the prosthetic side during this perturbation. But when using the neural control, what we see is just not a significant preference towards one side or the other. There's not a shift towards the intact side like with the passive. So overall, what we want to highlight here is that the center mass excursion, the stability is more similar to able-bodied individuals. The strategy is a lot more symmetric, and there's not an over-reliance on the intact side. And so starting to wrap things up, the last thing I want to talk about is the neuromuscular control, what this coordination looks like, what is their strategy on the neural level that feeds into this overall improvement in function. And so this is just a quick, showing you the task that we used to try and kind of study this. And what we used was a postural sway task. And the reason for that being is that when you look at the muscle activations during this task, you can break them down into two very simple groups. If you're trying to move your body to sway forward, what you're going to do is mostly activate muscles on the front side of your body, on your thigh and on your shank. And if you're trying to move your center mass backwards in this way, you're going to mostly activate muscles on the back of the body. So you can imagine they're very simple groups that you can break these down into as far as coordination goes. So this is a lot in one slide, so I'm going to break it down. What we look at is something called muscle synergy analysis, and we use a fancy term, non-negative matrix factorization, to decompose this EMG signal to say, how can we, on a more low dimensional level, explain this higher dimensional EMG signal? This is typically used when trying to study this coordination on the neuromuscular level. So in a more simple way, I'll break it down. In this figure, what we have are just a bunch of different muscles. So we have things like tibialis anterior, rectus femoris. These are the muscles on the front of the body. And then we have gastrocnemius, biceps femoris. These are the muscles on the back of the body. So with our able-bodied participant, what you would expect to see is kind of a grouping, like I said before, of the muscles on the back of the body. They're all working together. So this is them grouping these muscles and activating them simultaneously. And there's less of the muscles being activated on the front. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to compare the structure that able-bodied people use to our participants that use the neural control, and then when they use the passive device. So when people use the passive device, there's more of a reliance on thigh muscles than on just strictly the muscles on the back of the body. And then when using the neural control, the majority of the effort is being put into the muscles on the back of the body and less so on kind of extra thigh muscle activity. So the way that we broke down this analysis in comparing, okay, how similar is this to that and how similar is that to that, is we correlated the vectors between them. We said how similar is this vector of muscle activations compared to that? And we plotted them together, and just at a very high level, what we saw was that the similarity between people using their passive device and able-bodied control was not very similar. So this is essentially saying that the strategies are different between the two. But when using the neural control, this direct EMG, the neuromuscular strategy was a lot more correlated. The structure is a lot more similar to able-bodied individuals. So I apologize, this is a heavy slide, so thank you for sticking with me. But this is really exciting stuff that we saw. We saw people improving their balance. We saw the way that they improved their balance was more symmetry, not only on a biomechanics level, but on a neural level as well, neuromuscular control. And we look forward to, in the future, Dr. Huang is the one pushing this forward. I am now graduating at Duke, but it's really exciting to see where this could go, because what we did was a very straightforward approach. This is proportional control. We're taking just the magnitude of the signal, but there's a lot more that you can do using musculoskeletal models. Also implementing this in a device that someone could wear outside during daily life activities would be really exciting. And we had people train for 3 days. Like, what we want to also see is maybe on a long-term basis, what does this look like? How much more function can they get out of it? And then what other activities can this potentially benefit people? So thank you very much for your time and everything. Yeah. Oh, and yeah, sorry. Big thank you to everybody with the funding. There's a lot of lab mates that are also involved in this. Also a lot of funding. And thank you, Helen, for letting me talk about my research. So yeah.
Yeah. Have any closing comments, or do you want to take questions?
So we are ready for taking questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you describe a little bit the cylindrical looking artificial muscle? What's that composed of?
So that is, I think it's called McKibben muscle, but the setup is that you have just a rubber inner tube, and on the outside there's a sheath. That when the rubber tube expands, what it causes it to do is to contract like an actual muscle would do. So the similar, like the force length properties you have a muscle, similar to this like artificial muscle, these are McKibben actuators.
The voltage controlled contraction of the polymer? Or?
The control is of the air pressure. So there's the change in the air pressure coming into the rubber tube. Sorry.
It's schematic, in other words.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay.
I just wondered about the durability of the of the motor. I mean, how do you create something that will in fact allow someone to use a prosthetic device over time? How often does it have to be recharged? And
And I don't think it's wireless yet either, so maybe generally talking about the future of powering them would be a good.
Okay, so the pneumatic muscle, the prototype you saw, which is not portable. So that is only for proof of concept, in the lab. We want to see if we're using this control, power this joint, what the person can do. But for making this portable, so this slide is showing the motorized device. So for example, and then there's a commercial device already exists that they have like a motorized ankle that they already sell. So we are talking to some of the company, hopefully that we could using this. We're still in a negotiation. There's a long term of paperwork, but our goal is trying to make this available. And then you can study, you can see how much function that could restore for individual when they live in the daily environments. Yes, but that's definitely future work.
okay,
I think you can adapt the controller aspect of what you do to a commercially available.
Yes, yes. So the commercial device already available. So we just needed to make our controller embedded into that,
Right.
and be available to the
And
patient.
interface it to whatever signal.
Yes, the EMG, yes.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
This is always super interesting to kind of see the blending of hardware and software. Because I feel like in a lot of cases, you often have like a software team and a hardware team, and they don't always talk together. This is an interesting kind of combination. Can you talk a little bit about like what it's like to kind of work in both of those areas of hardware and software, and kind of the challenges of trying to mesh those two in the same research?
Yeah, so this is your observation is absolutely true. So in my lab, we have, so I felt like I have to bring up my team. I have a really strong team, and then some team member is really good at hardware design, and then some team member is good at the control coding, make the things work it out. So you do need a team like this. And I also felt like it's for hardware and the software design, if they are from the same team, then we are talking about the same thing, right? Because, I have to say, I collaborated with another professor who designed the hardware. Figure out that his hardware take us a long time, just as you know. So having a capability to design both is definitely, I think it's beneficial. But I have to put this as a truth that my innovation is really not a hardware design. So we just made a hardware available as a platform, and then we test our control innovation. But you're right. So we do have both capability on the both side. Yes.
Yeah, hi. Do you guys foresee this moving into other parts of the body? Right now, you're focusing on the leg, but recently a company called Eaton gave our nonprofit a robotic arm. And so I'm curious to know, is there future plans of taking this to other parts, prosthetics?
Yeah. So we already work on the upper limb muscle control of a person. So I show one video in the early on. So that's definitely a thread of our research, and then a couple of student is working tackling that problem. So absolutely, and then also for the wearable exoskeleton, this is prosthesis that we call it replace the limb, because limb gone and you replace the limb with robots. The exoskeleton is actually kind of augmenting, so you still have the limb, but it gives you a more power on the joints. So that one could be also using, because it has to coordinate with the humans what they wanted to do, right? So let's say if the robot is doing like a kicking, but you actually don't want it to do it, then that's a problem. So connecting that through this neural signal is another way you can think application of this.
Exciting.
Any other questions from speakers? Go ahead.
I'm trying to understand how you train people. I'm trying to understand how much is your training the person to respond to your design, and how much the person is training your algorithm to understand like how they individually right? Because each person is different, right? Like, because they are learning to use your device versus you're learning how they move, right?
You wanna answer this?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a really good question. What the nice thing about ours is there's no like huge AI algorithm in ours. Right now, it's just a very simple like pass through, like it's just filtering and then the control signal sent to the device. And so I know that's like a big area where it's training the device and the person simultaneously. So just if we only focus on the person like we've got here, we're kind of seeing what the upper limit might be, and then you could potentially add the algorithm on top of that to maybe push that forward. So I know that's the thing you write grants on, so.
Yeah, so but for this one, we mainly train human. So, right, because the control side is so straightforward, simple. It's mainly training the human nervous system. Can you restore the way you contract the muscle or activate the muscle to drive the prosthesis, right? So it's basically remapping. These muscles still used to be control ankle. Now they don't have any function after the amputation. So now can you restore that, have a consequence by contracting this muscle? So I think it's more training the human. So it's through a couple of days of the training. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because I can see where humans are different. I guess, you know, depending on the person, how long they have lost their limbs and their control probably is not gonna be the same, right? If I lost my
Yes.
leg 10 years ago versus just last month, I guess there's difference. And, you know, how you devise how to accommodate that, you know, and there's a mutual learning part. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, so when I first saw the title for your talk, I was expecting that there would be direct neural control. And I was wondering if that's really possible to get around the EMG business and just
Are you saying that pick up from like a brain signal?
open spine.
Spinal cord, okay. Well, this is a great question. It's let's talk about brain first. So if we want to take a brain signal, we could do a EEG, which is on the scalp, that you listen what's inside your brain is doing. Or you have more invasive approach, and maybe you have seen some of the news. That person lost like a very high level spinal cord injury that lost the movement of the full body. So these are like insert electrodes into the brain. Although I'm not promoting Elon Musk, but he has a Neuralink that trying to make this more available to everyone. But so far, this invasive approach is still very invasive. Like, when you put the electrodes into the brain, we needed to better understanding the safety, what's the consequence out of this. So for people lost a limb, actually the best neural control signal is actually from a muscle. The reason is it's still available, the residual muscle. Unless the nerve is totally damaged, otherwise they still have those phantom sensation of the limb. When they moving their arm, missing arm, they still contract this muscle and then generate the signal, which is the neural signal. So we can pick it up non-invasively. But beyond the limb loss, there are other neural or body parts usually it's intact. Whether or not they wanted to, have invasive electrodes, maybe one day when the technology is so well developed, then maybe possible. Surface EEG is just a very, very noisy, very difficult to decode because the brain control everything inside, right, the body. So it's harder to tell exactly what the person wants to do. So just my general comments on that.
That makes sense. Go ahead.
A lot of, all of this research you were showcasing was on adults. Are you doing similar or have hopes to do similar research on youth? I'm just thinking about younger individuals have incredibly higher neuroplasticity, and I'd be curious to see what this kind of research tells on a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 15-year-old.
I mean, that would be I think it's a really good point as far as neuroplasticity and learning. It would be really, really cool. I don't know currently that we have any research working with kids, but I know that'd be a really, really cool direction. So right now it's only on adults, and when we can mature that, I think that makes sense to be able to move there. But yeah, that's a really good point.
Do we have any other questions for the speakers? Okay, well, I think people probably want to come up and talk to you afterwards, so I'll close out so we can have people come and do that. So thank you so much.